information out here that we've collected over the years, but I'm going to only be able to share an hour and a half of that with you. But I've picked my favorite spots, some of the spookiest stories that I want to let you guys have that chance to see if you got some ghost interactions tonight. All right. So originally we're going to start with the history, just so you can kind of know where you're at, what to expect. One of the leaders got up to go check the door, and this is when they realized they had been barred inside and they were trapped. By the time they realized this, smoke started to billow in, and they had already lit this building on fire, and they burnt it to the ground, killing these remaining tribe men. It just caught fire a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of these fires are very unexplainable. And solve them with this Halloween story. So people believe that this church really has. There are up to 12 buildings around the town that you will see 3 parts of the buildings. Stop, so follow me. Watch your step here, guys. All right. So this is our first official stop on the tour. Behind me, you will see the Mintz family's original home. It's now called Whitehall, but the Mintz family built this house in 1895, and this was a place that they raised their family all the way up until 1902, when the railroad bought the building from them. After this, the railroad used this place as a boarding home for those railroad workers. Now, the railroad workers that were able to stay in this boarding home, they actually were the only ones that made money off of the railroad. So a lot of the men that were working on the railroad really didn't make much money. So you had to be kind of a little bit more wealthy to live here and to stay here. You know, in the 1930s, this was our very first funeral home in town. So if you was weird, this was like the Day of the Dead. So perhaps maybe that is why she shows herself that way in those photos. So if we get that bride, we will either get what just looks like a full bride in the gown and veil, or am I even saying that right? Gown and veil, and then also like the Dia de los Muertos now. So we'll come back here and learn a little bit more about this at the end of our tour, but we're ready to start marching. So y'all keep walking. I'm going to walk beside you. Keep on down this road here. I'll walk beside you so I can talk. We're just going to go all the way down. Now pretty soon, guys, you're going to start to see a lot of cats. I already alongside their loved one, that cat could reincarnate, and they could love the cat just like they did with the spirit inside of it of their loved one. Some people around this town believe that these cats that are coming down this path over here, it is cobblestone stones, so just watch your step. They can't come with slippery. And if you're not wearing closed-toed shoes, just watch out for standing in anthills. Welcome to Times Square. It's spelled like the earth. This is a location where we have weddings. So the lady that owns the place here is an elderly lady here. Been here since the 1980s. We owned this place for a very long time, and she is the one that told us a lot of the stories here. But when we did our research, we found out a very interesting story. So not only welcome to our ice house. So originally in 1919, this was our ice house, and when the railroad would come through in good weather, if it wasn't too hot out, they could bring a giant block of ice on the train, and they could place it inside here and surround it by some insulation like hay so that it wouldn't melt so quickly. But on nice days like this, they'd be able to come and chop off pieces of ice and take it to their houses, put it in their ice boxes, and use it to keep their perishables cold. Now, there's a very creepy and disgusting story that goes along with this time period. In 1919, our local mortician worked out at his own home. So this was before we had our funeral home in town. He was a young man that just graduated his schooling, and he owned his practice in his own home. One day, there was a knock that came to his door, and it was one of his neighbors. His neighbor said that one of his friends he had not seen or heard from in several days, and he was an elderly man, and he was afraid that maybe perhaps he had died. So he asked the mortician if he would go with him down the road to the farm to see if they could check on him and find out what happened. As they approached the farm, they got closer to the door, they started to smell that familiar and unmistakable smell of death. When they opened the door, the smell was just unbearable. They knew immediately from that they were going to find him deceased. As they walked through the house, they went to his bedroom and opened the door, and there was the man. The farmer was laying in his bed. He had passed away in his sleep, but he had been there for several days already, and he was already starting to decompose. At this point, the mortician and the friend knew that they needed to find a way to get him back to life. But one of the worst parts of the Victorian times was that people were being buried alive. Back then, our medical equipment was not really good enough to tell whether or not someone was alive or dead. And so sometimes people would be buried alive because they would turn different colors from yellow fever. They would be kind of a yellowish color, sometimes a green color, or they would be very, very pale and cold. And so when someone would Alright guys, I want to direct your attention across the road over here. This is One Tree Brothers Cafe and Saloon. So the left side that you see here, the tan colored building, that is our original One Tree Brothers Saloon. It was built in 1902 during the railroad times because the brothers Charlie and Dale they saw an opportunity for lots of money. When they built this place, you may notice that it looks kind of a lot like the building in the movie. The reason is because it's a hotel. Now, the ladies of the evening used to hang out upstairs on that balcony trying to entice the men coming through to come up and enjoy a sandwich and the other kind of thing to get my drift. And they also had some strategic ways of placing the women around town so that no matter which direction they came from, they would be interested in coming and enjoying it. So if you guys look at this tree right here, you're going to see and that's because they used to place one of the prettiest roles they had right there so that anybody walking by would look to go inside. They also placed them over across the track. You'll see a train park over there now, but that used to be where our original train station was. And it has actually burned down twice. They did not rebuild it over there. But originally they used to put ladies over there. So there was always some pretty ladies.
Dallas to Houston, all through East Texas, and they used to rob banks. And they used to rob banks during the Great Depression. So this was a good place for them to hit because all your railroad men came through this town. And so by doing so, the story goes, they parked right out here in front of the bank. They traveled with a man named George. George went to the backside as a lookout. Bonnie and Clyde, they ran the side, shot the bank manager and the two tellers. They stole $7,500 from the bank vault, which is still open every single day. But unfortunately, the guy that owns it now is only by appointment only. So it was the jail in town. You can still see where the bars were. On the top side of the window. There's little holes on both sides.
You see where the bars would come down from those halls all the way down.
Yeah. And it was the jail up until 1908. And they moved the jail from this side of town to the other side of town where we're now have the jailhouse, bar, and saloon.
Which we heard earlier during serenade.
Yes. And because the town is set up acoustically, you can hear them all the way on the other side of town. Now, because it was a heavily fortified place, they changed from the jail to the bank in 1908. And when it was the bank, it got robbed by somebody famous. Anyone want to take a guess? Famous Texas bank robbers. Oh, they don't teach you this in school anymore. Now, Bonnie and Clyde. People may have heard of that name before. And if not, it kind of redo everything.
You can touch it?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. You can see people pick up all stuff out of it.
Rub it for luck.
So Bonnie and Clyde are well known to revisit the places that they've committed murder and robbed. And entice those men to come up and talk to them. They also go back there to smoke. Sometimes if you're brave and you're a ghost hunter and you take some ghost equipment out back there, I recommend taking a small bottle of whiskey and we'll knock it over and throw it around. Alright guys, if you're ready, you just follow me. Right up here. judge. His name was Vernon Doring, and he was known in town for being our hanging judge. But guys, this was his house right here behind me, and this was his bedroom window right above my head. So think about that. He hung people in this tree right over here, right behind his house, where he could watch them hang for 3 nights and 3 days. So we would hang them here on the tree for at least that time. But remember, we talked earlier in the tour about how sometimes the horse and buggy would take up to 3 to 6 days to come and pick up these dead bodies to take them to their respective graveyards. We'll let those others catch up real quick. Active spot for that. People have said that they've had their hair pulled. A lot of people tell me they feel like they're being hugged from behind, like what a little kid would do if they saw somebody they liked. A lot of people have said that they've been tapped. I personally have heard whispers in my ear when I'm standing up there and there's nobody behind me. I've had tour guides literally quit in the middle of a tour because I've had experiences like that. So this can sometimes be a really creepy thing. But mostly I'd say the hugging and the hair pulling is very big out here. All right guys, whenever you're ready, we're just gonna walk down to the end here. Didn't feel so stifling. This is because we did walk under that kind of an archway. So it does say Doring Court is made out of wood. So that's how you can tell that made different. So you guys follow me. We're going to go to one of our last stops on the tour. Get ready to end it. So there's over 5 hours of info out here, but unfortunately I only get to share about an hour and a half. There's so many neat stories. What's cool about our company is that no matter how many times you come out, if you get a different tour guide, you're going to get a totally different tour. It'll take you to different places than I do. Alright, so before we end the tour, I got a little ritual that I like to do just to help us to feel a little lighter, not so spooked out. Some people get really scared on my tour. So I'm going to be crossing over this bridge, and I want you to think about the water actually moving. Most of the time it does move when there's enough of it in there. Remember we talked about moving water, that negative spirits and entities cannot pass over it. So if anything bad has been hanging out with us tonight, if any spirits are attached to us at this moment, we're going to leave them right here. We're not taking them with us. If a ghost goes home with you tonight, I will be out of a job, so that's why we're going to leave them right here. They're going to be trapped in this place. So as we cross over this bridge, I just want you to imagine yourself releasing anything, and if you have the heebie-jeebies right now, you can just go like this. Shake off the heebie-jeebies. I'm going to go first so that I can walk through the spider web so you guys don't have to. Guys, you may recognize where we're at. We're back at the start where we started at Whitehall, and this is the back side here, and the bride has also been seen back here as well. When it was a bridal shop, they did have small weddings back here, really little ones, but you can see the bride sometimes in your photos, even in the windows here, but also in this back courtyard as well. You'll notice that there's an iron gate going all the way around this entire building. We believe that that kind of acts as a barrier so that she's sort of locked inside. This is one reason why prisons use iron bars, because it's supposed to keep the evil locked inside. So we believe by having this fence around this, it kind of just traps the spirits in there. It'd be pretty difficult for her to leave on her own.